The Switch is home to hundreds upon thousands of games, and over the years, it's become more clear that a lot of those games are remasters and ports. Ever since the Switch launched, Nintendo has been pumping out ports of games originally released on Wii U and other consoles. It started with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which was really good and added a ton of content to the original game. But for every Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, we also have a new Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, which practically adds nothing. The Switch is also home to several full remasters of games that were released on consoles like the Wii, GameCube, and even 3DS. It's so cool seeing some of these games running in a higher resolution. Not $60 cool though. Yeah, so Nintendo has this weird habit of releasing basic remasters for the same price as a brand new video game. And a lot of these remasters do nothing more than a bump in resolution and maybe an increased frame rate if you're lucky. Now, I gotta give credit where credit is due. Some of these remasters are really good, like the Metroid Prime remaster and the Pikmin 1 and 2 remasters. For one, both of these games are less than $60, and in Metroid Prime's case, the visuals are completely overhauled. It's not just a simple resolution bump, making this game look stunning on Switch. Why couldn't they do that for Super Mario 3D All-Stars? 2020 marked the 35th anniversary of the Super Mario series, and to celebrate, Nintendo released a collection of 3 quote-unquote 3D Mario remasters for the Switch. Now, remastered is kind of an exaggeration because these games add nothing besides an increased resolution. They didn't even bother making Mario 64 widescreen, even though they went through the effort of doing that with Sunshine. Oh, but both Mario 64 and Sunshine still don't run at 60 FPS while Galaxy does. How? Top it off with the fact that this was a limited time release and it was sold for $60, and yeah, this collection kinda sucks. It was discovered early on in this game's life cycle that the ports of Mario 64 and Sunshine were just running on emulation, which might explain why the games were still locked at 30 FPS. There was also no native GameCube controller support for Sunshine, which everyone expected the game to have. Like, why does Smash Bros get GameCube support while Sunshine doesn't? Thankfully, this was addressed in a patch, but still. And by far the biggest offense, in my opinion, was the absence of Super Mario Galaxy 2. Come on now. Not only would Mario Galaxy 2 add more value to the collection, but it would also... no way, that's about it. It was just really weird. You include all of the major 3D Mario releases prior to the Switch's release, except for Galaxy 2? Make it make sense. But apart from the ability to listen to the game's OSTs in the menu, Super Mario 3D All-Stars does nothing else. I mean, at least it included 3 games at $60, which is not something I can say for the rest of the games in this video, but damn, this was disappointing. Jump ahead to 2021 and we got the release of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. You know what? I was pretty hyped for this release. Up until this point, the only Zelda game I was really familiar with was Breath of the Wild, so I wanted to try out a traditional Zelda game to see what that was all about. So after the announcement dropped, I headed to the eShop to pre-order the game and was met with a scam. Skyward Sword HD is not worth $60 in any way, shape, or form. It's a similar situation to 3D All-Stars, as all this game does is improve the visuals. Unlike 3D All-Stars though, this game also improves the frame rate, so that's nice. But even though everything is in HD now, I think this could have benefited heavily from a complete overhaul. It looks rough, man, and it does not look like a Switch game at all. There are some quality of life changes too. Motion controls are no longer required, as you can use the thumbstick to swing your sword in whatever direction. Some segments of the game were cut down to be shorter with less fluff, and you can fast travel to the sky at any time. If you buy a $25 amiibo, that is. That's my first issue. You lock a very good improvement to the game behind what's basically a $25 DLC. Not to mention how this is more than the normal price of other amiibo. Why? And the motion controls are pretty rough with the lack of a sensor bar. It had a similar issue to Mario Galaxy and 3D All-Stars, where you had to constantly recenter the cursor because there's no longer a sensor bar to track where you're pointing on screen. So in Skyward Sword HD, you often have to recalibrate the gyro so it doesn't screw up your sword swings. Overall, Skyward Sword HD is a decent remaster on its own, but it's the price tag that was a major turnoff for most people. It doesn't help that many people at the time were hoping for a sort of Zelda remastered trilogy pack that included ports of Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD along with Skyward Sword, but instead we only got one of those things for full price. And to this day, we still don't have Wind Waker and Twilight Princess on Switch, but that discussion is for another video. At least Skyward Sword gave us some good quality of life stuff, but I still would have preferred to have a trilogy on Switch. Now, let me ask you this. why does Luigi's Mansion 2 HD even exist? The first game in the series was right there, but no, you choose to quote-unquote remaster the second game that had its fans, but not as many fans as the first game. It's just such an oddball of a release. Not because it barely does anything to improve the experience, which we'll get into that soon, but it was released near the end of the Switch's life when Luigi's Mansion 3 already existed, and I will stand on the fact that these two games are pretty much the same thing. In fact, I just think Luigi's Mansion 3 does everything Luigi's Mansion 2 did, but better. But yeah, screw a full Luigi's Mansion 3DS remaster, let's just port the second game and make it $60 instead. And I wouldn't even care as much if the game looked good. Like the other games in this video, Luigi's Mansion 2 does jack shit when it comes to enhancing the visuals. Everything just looks so flat here, man. It does look like a 3DS game if it was just emulated with HD resolution, because I mean, that's pretty much what the game is. But why is it locked to 30 FPS still? I know damn well 60 FPS would have been more than achievable because, again, this is a 3DS game. And I know doubling the frame rate might have caused some issues with physics and controls and whatnot, but that stuff shouldn't be too hard to fix. It would take effort, which, you know, whoa, I might be asking for too much now. But yeah, the game doesn't look good. That's the first problem with the game. There also aren't any new modes. There's not even a co-op mode with Luigi, which was something that the 3DS port of Luigi's Mansion 1 and Luigi's Mansion 3 had. Being able to play through the game with a second person would have been awesome, and honestly, that might have redeemed the game a little bit. But no, there's no co-op multiplayer or any new modes in the game. At least they kept Scare Scraper, but let's be honest, if they got rid of that, Nintendo would never hear the end of it. But yeah, it's safe to say that this game is not worth $60. It is quite literally a direct port from the 3DS that has no changes outside of a slight resolution increase. It's unfortunate because this game has many fans, and I feel like they could have gotten something so much better. But as it is now, this is the worst first-party remaster on Nintendo Switch if you ask me. And that brings us to the present, with the Donkey Kong Country Returns HD remaster on the horizon. You know, when I first saw this revealed, I was kinda mixed. On one hand, I thought it was cool that Returns was coming to the Switch, because this, along with Tropical Freeze, are some of the best 2D platformers of all time. But I was also skeptical because I knew this game would likely do the bare minimum. It doesn't help that this game doesn't hit the console until early next year, which by that point, we should be getting the Switch 2 very soon, which makes me even more skeptical. I really hope this isn't just a cash grab to fill out the Switch's final year, but from what we've seen so far, anything is possible, really. So far, the game looks fine, I guess. It's not anything groundbreaking, and it sure isn't on the level of DKC Tropical Freeze, but it looks okay. I've come to accept the fact that not every Switch port is going to have Paper Mario Thousand Year Door level of improvements, and that's just something we're going to have to live with. It was also confirmed that this port of the game is going to include the extra levels that were included in the 3DS version of the game. So hey, at least that's some sort of extra content, and of course, motion controls will be optional. So yeah, so far, things are looking pretty decent. What I was not expecting was to see people criticizing it for looking worse than the Wii version, and as I saw more comparisons, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Some of the comparisons make the remaster look really good and show a lot of promise, but then other comparisons show lighting issues, shadows acting weird, and other visual things that weren't present in the original game. So as it is now, I can't draw a solid conclusion on whether or not this game will be worth the full price of $60. We're just going to have to wait until the game comes out. So what is the moral of the story here? Well, unfortunately, Nintendo has been pretty lazy with some of their Nintendo Switch remasters. It's a very weird situation because, again, there are ports and remasters on the Switch that are really good and are reasonably priced, but the ones that cost more have fewer changes made to them. It is a very strange phenomenon. So that's the problem with Nintendo Switch remasters. If you're going to price your remaster at $60, then the game should be a significant improvement compared to the original version, whether that is in terms of the amount of content introduced or how improved the visuals are, because Nintendo is currently getting away with pricing some of these lazy games at the full price of $60, when they really shouldn't be. But that's all for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.